Hey, it's Soul, and this is not another episode of Warcraft Weekly, and that's totally okay. Whatever the case, though, today I do want to talk about what I feel is a pretty important discussion being grumbled about in game and in forums and in social media, and that is world content, specifically max level world content that you have trouble doing because it's all centered around having lots of other players participating and no one's there. So I'm going to talk about how we got here and the arguments and solutions in case you agree that yes, there are problems and you're interested in what the WoW team can do about them and maybe some ideas that we have. So hit the like button, subscribe for the copium filled commentary, and let's begin. This is 100% personal opinion, but Dragonflight overall, I think, great expansion. Arguably the best we've ever had, with lots to do, a very responsive dev team, and one wish after another being granted over these past couple of months. But we can't disregard the realities that the bucket of player wishes, it's more like an ocean. And there's today's topic on world content, of course. Dragonflight's launch unleashed the likes of Centaur Hunts and the Community Feast. Those are optional events you can jump into where all present players share progression and credit. Backing up that activity was a sort of long-tail progression reward thing with Renown, and meanwhile, hunts and feasts, well, those dropped rare things like the alchemical flavor pocket and cooking recipes that keep a trickle of people coming back. But what's happened since? 10.05 brought us the Primalist Fury event, which, again, it relied on big group participation to hold multiple objectives. But for anyone who is totally alone, which was a reality that came very, very quickly, the event became dependent on relying on the group finder tool and being on during prime time and just being lucky. And then we had 10.07 and the Forbidden Reach Zone. Yeah, it's a fun little spot full of rares and creatures and rares and powers to collect and more rares. There's a lot to the zone that revolves around taking on elite rares, sporting at least like 4 or so million health, maybe more. Some also have mechanics to make them as tough as early dungeon or raid bosses from WoW's heyday. When that patch first released, naturally players went at it like locusts. They were hopping from rare to rare, annihilating them before some could even land a hit. It was the hotness because it gave tradable catch-up gear, these keys that you could use towards making a powerful ring and transmog stuff. But as content marches forward, there's less of a reason to return once we've obtained everything that we wanted, and anyone who's coming in late, tough. So hopefully the group finder will have something going for those players. And time passed again, and then we were welcomed to Zerlek Caverns in patch 10.1, where almost the same thing happened. A lot of stuff to collect in the zone, and enemies to defeat for loot and more, but I'd argue that Zerlek Caverns only had similar staying power to the Forbidden Reach, which it felt like a loot pinata by comparison, and that's not good for a major patch. Rock Assaults didn't have the kind of must-have items that the Forbidden Reach had. The rares and the Research Expedition event had a much higher diminishing return on repeated kills or completions. I'm drawing this narrative that not everyone shares, but I'm pushing this narrative that as the general population loses interest in certain outdoor content, it becomes much, much more difficult for the remaining population or for visitors in the future to even participate in these zones. Like, these characters are too weak to take on mobs alone, and the rewards aren't quite attractive enough to get a stable audience. Now, I can end my talk here and leave it to you folks to discuss and elaborate your complaints in the comments, but let's be fair, there is a pre-made group tool that gives an opportunity, at least, for someone to set up a group, hopefully during prime time, and knock out a bunch of rares or whatever that would otherwise be super impossible or just very time-consuming to do. And we still have a few more patches to go during even this second season of Dragonflight. But I mostly get behind the idea. I hear people who are tired of the same old routine of banding together to Zerg rares. I hear the frustrations of not being able to enjoy outdoor content as a solo player. Of course, I've also heard of the desire for, from players to have more difficult outdoor content, but since outdoor content is public, it's a little bit of a challenge to scale enemy health and damage in a very satisfactory way, as it's been trying to do for quite some time now. So let's look towards the near future and what the WoW team has learned. We don't have all the details as they've been changing with every build, but time rifts in the upcoming patch 10.15 are trying a different approach. The simplest way that I can explain time rifts is that they're pretty much like the community feast event for the Tuskar, in that participating players, they perform a bunch of different, again, individual tasks, and they build up a shared community meter, only that it also takes place in Thaldrazis, and, well, most of the tasks involve violence. Something new is that there's immediate individual credit in the form of currency and reputation as you complete objectives and defeat mobs. As a shared event, the better everyone does, the better the box that you get at the end of this pretty short timer. There's an item that you can obtain fairly easily that lets you guarantee a minimum box, I think once, maybe twice a week. On top of that, a portal appears later in the event and people jump through this to defeat an enemy that's kind of something close to a world boss, which offers a quest completion for a box of goodies, including said rep and currency, although I'm not sure if the boss is meant to drop loot on its own. The event runs on a regional clock that will eventually be tracked by like weak auras and wowhead. I speculate that when it's time to jump into this boss portal, which will also be on a fixed timer, there might be some sort of background tech shenanigans that shards people together from all over the region to ensure that a minimum number of people are pulled into these boss rooms to give players a fighting chance. And my guesstimation, you only need I'd say 3 players who are sporting 420-something gear, and a group as small as that will achieve success. What's most important is that what you get from these time rifts aren't exactly gear drops or cosmetics, but you get currency to buy these gear drops and cosmetics from a vendor instead. So there doesn't seem to be RNG in this case, and these currencies can also be earned from completing daily content. I feel pretty reassured in this case that even if I were to take my time, even if I were to run these like a few seasons or expansions later, I could still work towards getting these cosmetics and mounts and what have you, and not feel left out the way that I do in Zeralite Caverns or the Forbidden Reach. So before I leave you to comment, I want to share this idea. It's not a great idea, okay? And it's certainly not something that can be whipped up in a patch, but I'm excited to talk about this, and maybe we can use this as a jumping off point of sorts. I think it would be super cool to have a robust companion feature in WoW, basically a bodyguard that you can summon for outdoor content, but it's built as this, more extensive, account shared and evergreen feature. So here's the premise. Throughout our journey on Azeroth, our champions have met hundreds of characters, and surely at least a handful of them would be interested enough in joining us for outdoor adventures. I mean, only one at a time, of course. Imagine after having completed certain quest requirements or repping up or buying a contract or whatever, we can easily call on and dismiss these companions, much like in Legion or in Shadowlands with Pokepoke. Some of these companions will be super passive and just give us buffs. Some are active and they help to DPS or heal or even tank. Something important is that their throughput should be based on the enemy's maximum health. So they're never overpowered or underpowered, but they're always at least minimally useful to have just present. The general idea that I have is that, okay, maybe a tank can't take on the current world boss, but maybe they can take on earlier ones without any problem. But a DPS companion would be a decent contributor no matter what. A companion isn't likely to survive if you pull a field full of elites, but if you can tank a bunch of them, they'll probably do well at keeping you alive or at least whittling the enemy down. And closer to what we're talking about today, they should be able to hold their own against an elite rare. As this account level and evergreen system, I think it would be pretty neat to have a collection of companions that your main and alt can call in a pinch. But improving on outdoor content and making the rewards less RNG is also a step in the right direction. And that's all I gotta say, so please leave a comment. Let me know how you're feeling about Dragonflight outdoor content. Leave a like, subscribe for more commentary, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.